2 games in a row for the Giants were supposed to be televised, but both games rained out, canceled. What is this? This is Arizona. What are we talking about? What are we doing here? However, we did get a look at Kyle Harrison dominating the Dodgers, and we got a look at a Giants lineup that could be a lot better.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily San Francisco Giants podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Giants, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. My name is Ben Kaspick, and on the show we provide daily episodes Monday through Friday, talking about the San Francisco Giants in a way that's data-driven and rational, but also simple, passionate, and accessible to all. I'm a former contributor for the baseball statistics and analysis websites Beyond the Box Score and Rotographs. I've been podcasting about the Giants since 2015, and I'm a lifelong fan. Also coming up on 5 years hosting Locked On Giants. It has flown by. Thank you for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube. Check us out there if you have not already. Please hit that subscribe button, thumbs up button, whatever you can do to help us out. We appreciate it so much, so thank you. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. New customers join today, and you'll get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. And where we get started is by being sad about the fact that there were 2 games. There were supposed to be 2 games in a row. Actually 3, because tomorrow is supposed to be televised as well. And weather actually looks better, like it won't be rained out. But yeah, you know, the Giants aren't even the team televising these games, which, by the way, it's an annual complaint. And I'm just going to be a voice of the fans here. It's just ridiculous how few games the Giants televise. You look at, like, you know, the Dodgers televised the game in the Giants ballpark last night. The Angels earlier televised the game in the Giants ballpark. And what's the deal with that? But I do want to get into, actually, I notice I have the wrong graphic up on my screen on YouTube. So if you bear with me with 1 second, it's going to be updated. And there it is. And the first thing I want to get into is that Kyle Harrison looked the part until the rain cut the outing short and ultimately cut the game short. But he just completely overpowered. Look, it wasn't the normal Dodgers lineup. It wasn't Betts, Freeman, and Ohtani at the top, but you did have some guys like Will Smith, Kike Hernandez, Teoscar Hernandez, mostly those guys. But just the fact that, I mean, when all was said and done, the line score, it kind of ticks me off that he ends up 2 2/3 with 2 walks and 2 hits, because the 2 walks came on like 8 consecutive pitches when the rain was pouring down, and they eventually called the tarp on the field and called the game. But like, he was attacking the zone, and that's a huge deal for him. Like, that's all he really needs to do to take the leap. And so to see him out there just attacking the strike zone, attacking hitters, and generating swings and misses. I mean, he got a lot of swings and misses, and it wasn't just the fastball. The fastball is his best pitch, I would say. We weren't getting radar readings, so, you know, that's always helpful to see how hard is he throwing the ball. But it's also helpful to see the swings of the hitters. And you're talking about, you know, it is spring training. I know, like, of course, usual caveats apply, but guys like Kike Hernandez, just lefty killers, and 0 for 2 strikeouts. And so, I don't know, Kyle Harrison, I mean, just looked the part. He looked like a strikeout machine, and sure enough, I mean, his spring strikeout rate, 35%. His strikeout rate in AAA last year, 35.6%. His strikeout rate in AA, 36%. Like, and in the majors, it was 24%, which is even a little bit above average. But we're still talking about a guy who's 22 years old, born in 2001 in August. And so I have a lot of, I don't want to say confidence in Kyle Harrison. That's a little bit of a strong word because with young, unproven players, you just never know. But I have a lot of excitement about Kyle Harrison. And the one thing I said it the other day on the radio with Kerry Crowley on KNBR, was that I love Kyle Harrison, but I don't love him if he's just like your number 2 starter to start the season when he's got all of 34 2/3 innings under his belt at the major league level. Like, that's pretty unusual. And I mean, when I say pretty unusual, that's extremely unusual if that in fact is what they go with. And that is why we talk about the fit of veteran starting pitchers, essentially. But it's complicated because they've got Alex Cobb and Robbie Ray coming back eventually, and Alex Cobb ahead of schedule, which we'll get to. But I just wanted to just highlight Kyle Harrison's outing and the fact that he was attacking the strike zone. And it's just such a shame that the rain in, Arizona, which, back in, I don't know, I have, some of you have been alive longer than I have, but I can't remember. It was just like in the last 5-7 years where the weather in Arizona this time of year, it can be cold, it can be raining. Like, what is up with that? It used to just be like hot and sunny all the time in this time of year in Arizona. But nowadays, back-to-back rain delays. It was like lightning in their potential game tonight against the Padres. So very disappointing with the rain. But one other thing that we did get to see was a little bit of a look at the Giants lineup, and it looked very opening day-ish in a way. Opening day-ish, maybe if there was a lefty on the mound, because the Dodgers had James Paxton, veteran lefty, on the mound, and there was just one little tweak, I think, that kind of wasn't necessarily what you would see on opening day, but maybe if it was a right-handed pitcher, I should say. And then there was also an important kind of decision that was made about who was the starting shortstop, and that particular person made a big impact on this 2-inning game. So we will get into the lineup, what I saw out of this lineup, and also the significance of the player who was hitting ninth for the Giants. We'll get into all of that in just a minute. And before we do, today's episode is brought to you in part by Factor. Eating better is easy with Factor's delicious, ready-to-eat meals. Literally tons of them in my fridge right over there. Every fresh, never frozen meal is chef-crafted, dietitian-approved, important to me, and ready to go in just 2 minutes. You'll have over 35 different options to choose from every week, including Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, and Keto. Also, there are more than 60 add-ons to help you stay fueled up and feeling good all day long. So what are you waiting for? Get started today and get after your goals. We're talking 2-minute meals here. Fuel up fast with Factor's restaurant-quality meals that are ready to heat and eat whenever you are. Most importantly to me, no prep, no mess meals. Factor meals are ready to heat and eat. There's no prepping, no cooking, and no cleanup needed. And you're saving money because we've done the math, and Factor is less expensive than takeout, and every meal is dietitian approved to be nutritious and delicious. So it's a no-brainer. Head to factormeals.com/LockedOnMLB50 and use code LockedOnMLB50 to get 50% off. That's code LockedOnMLB50 at factormeals.com/LockedOnMLB50 to get 50% off. All right, here we go. We are going to get into the Giants lineup. Again, spring game that was only 2 innings long, but nonetheless, it was an opening day-ish looking lineup, and you always look out for those, especially with a new manager. I mean, we kind of knew what we were getting with Gabe Kapler after a while, but you've got a new manager who's probably going to do things a little bit differently. And so there's actually a lot that we can say about the lineup that Bob Melvin went with in this game, I believe, including how the shortstop battle is going. Thanks again for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. Everydayers on Monday, hopefully we're talking about the Giants and their signing of Blake Snell, which know that they haven't signed Blake Snell, but hopefully they do over the weekend. And we'll do an emergency podcast, and we'll be meeting with Sully from Locked On MLB, breaking it down even more on Monday. That's how it went with Matt Chapman last week. So hopefully more of the same. I can't believe Snell's not signed. And Jordan Montgomery. What the heck is going on? Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV in the free Fire TV Channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day, like my hypothetical Snell acquisition, with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today, now available on the free Fire TV Channels app. So, the lineup. I know it was March 7th, but the Giants were coming off an off day, and it was the debut of Matt Chapman. They know that it's a televised game, even if it's televised by the Dodgers. But yeah, it had an opening day-ish look outside of the fact that they're going to be facing a righty. I'm not sure the Padres have a single lefty in their projected rotation, and so you wouldn't. That's who the Giants face on opening day, by the way, is the Padres in San Diego. So the one spot where you might see something different than this, and I'm not necessarily talking about the order, I'm talking about the players who were in the lineup, but Wilmer Flores started at first base. And I think that's the platoon. I think right there you're looking at Lamont Wade, who, don't sleep on Lamont Wade. I mean, look at the man's, it was like a 372 on base percentage last year, which was like 12th highest in the major leagues. And so the dude gets on base, and that's what you want to do. And that's what I saw out of this lineup is that, again, March 7th, spring training, we're not reading too much into it, but you see the potential with some of these new guys that they bring in, plus some of the guys they already had. And what that is seeing pitches. And I think Jung Hoo Lee, we don't know him that well, but he's a guy, like Farhan Zaidi's kind of mentioned this trait before, but just an ability to recognize that a pitch is going to be a ball, like right out of the hand of the pitcher, to the point where there's no thought of even swinging. I saw that from Jung Hoo Lee in his one at bat, like easy takes. Like, I'm not saying they were easy takes because the pitches were way out of the zone. I'm saying that Jung Hoo Lee just kind of has good strike zone awareness, and he also has an exceptional kind of bat to ball contact skills. He did ground out in the at bat. And then Wilmer Flores actually struck out. But then, I mean, Flores is a guy who's tough to strike out. Jung Hoo Lee is a guy who's tough to strike out. Those two back to back, you can see a reduction in strikeouts for this team, adding a guy like Lee to the mix, and having Flores maybe in there a lot. But they just continued to grind on James Paxton, and grinding pitchers was kind of what they did in 2021. And so if we could see more of that from this offense, that would be a really good sign. And I think that with the players that they added, I mean, first of all, Michael Conforto looked good, had a good left-on-left at bat and drew a walk. But then Jorge Soler, I mean, he was just taking huge hacks at pitches that were in the zone, swung and missed through some pitches, whatever. But he's patient. Like, that's the thing, is you think, and I complained about this on Twitter. Somebody, I think it was Jim Bowden, in The Athletic, wrote about how Soler doesn't match this front office's desire for hitters who are patient. Well, that's just not true about Jorge Soler. Like he's not a wild free swinger at all. He's someone who draws his walks and doesn't chase outside the zone a lot. At least he's better than league average. I mean, we're talking he's had a walk rate of over 10% every year since 2016. And last year was 11.4%. League average is like 7 or 8%. So he walks. And so, to have that ability to just be super dangerous, like if you throw a strike, I'm going to crush it. But then if you throw a ball, I'm going to take it and get on base. I'm not afraid to take a walk. That is what they love. And that is what Jorge Soler, just that at technically plate appearance that he took last night was a perfect illustration for me. And I know not every one of you by far was able to watch this game because it was televised by the Dodgers. You have to have MLB.TV, which is quite expensive, but I was watching it. I do subscribe to MLB.TV, kind of part of the job. But Matt Chapman, same thing. He ended up striking out looking, which is funny because I mentioned that again on KNBR the other night. How there's some like Brandon Belt in Matt Chapman in the sense that he's really selective and the strikeout rate is kind of high. And so I think you're going to see some called third strikes like you saw with Brandon Belt, and it's going to drive some people nuts. But at the same time, philosophically in the game, it's kind of something that teams don't mind. They don't want you swinging at borderline pitches and making poor contact. They'd rather that you are just kind of dialed in on like a certain hot spot in your zone. And if it's not there, just spit on it. Don't take it. Don't swing at it. And so Chapman, he ended up striking out looking, but it was still a grindy at bat. And just up and down the lineup, they had kind of grinding at bats. And so, yes, it was March 7th. It was a spring game. It doesn't really mean anything. But the additions plus the players that they still have being the type of guys who also do that, it was a glimpse into what could be a more productive Giants lineup, which they really need. And it was also a glimpse into what could be a far more productive defensive alignment for the San Francisco Giants, having Matt Chapman make his debut. The stabilizing presence he's going to bring there. But then importantly, down at the bottom of the order was Nick Ahmed. And I think that it's time to start talking about Nick Ahmed as the potential favorite to be the Giants' opening day shortstop. I think it just makes a lot of sense unless Marco Luciano just completely catches fire over the last few weeks of spring training. We're literally less than 3 weeks from opening day. Nick Ahmed, he's a lot like Brandon Crawford, except 3 years younger and doesn't have that history with the team that would make him impossible to DFA. I've said this over and over, but nobody in their right mind, no offense if you thought this, but like very few people, I did a poll on Twitter, obviously unscientific, wasn't like a random sample of Giants fans, but there was like 3.7% of people who responded, over 300 respondents, thought that Brandon Crawford would be back in 2024. So I didn't expect him back. I expected him to retire. And so did like 75% of the people who voted in the poll. So anyway, Nick Ahmed, it's a non-roster invitee. And so you'd have to add him to the 40-man, which means making a corresponding move. Although they're probably going to shed a couple of players who are on the 40-man, Joey Bart being one of them, J.D. Davis being another probable player to be traded, in my opinion. And if you want to hear full explanations, I've done full episodes on that in the recent past, and you can easily find them. Scroll down or go back on YouTube or whatever. But Nick Ahmed, he saved a run. We talk about defensive runs saved. He literally, there was one right there in the first inning when there was a runner on second and there was a ball hit deep in the hole at shortstop, and he just ranged far to his right and made, a diving play, got the ball right in the webbing of his glove, and it just saved a run. If that ball gets through the infield, he didn't get an out. That's the thing. It's like you don't always have to get an out to make a great defensive play. And it was with 2 outs. He dove. It kept the runner from second from scoring. And then Harrison got out of the inning. And so there you go. Like, preventing a run is the same as scoring a run. You have to score, though, to win. You don't have to prevent a run to win. But, a run allowed is not good. And he prevented one right there. And so the defense is tantalizing. When you look at Ahmed on the left side, he's, former Gold Glover at least once, and I think maybe more than once, and maybe more than twice. I don't know exactly, but I've seen him. Obviously, he was with the D-backs for a long, long time. And anyway, it was just nice to see that kind of defense. And, you're getting that from Patrick Bailey as well. You might get that from Jung Hoo Lee. So suddenly you're talking about maybe having multiple elite defenders on your team for a team that has had its struggles defensively in the last couple of seasons. And so, I don't know. I think that Nick Ahmed is your favorite to be the opening day shortstop and just kind of hide out in the 9 spot in the lineup. You'd kind of have a couple of guys in Patrick Bailey and Ahmed who are defense first players, but I think you can get away with having a couple of guys who that's kind of their calling card. And also, these guys aren't like totally overmatched at the plate. Ahmed's numbers aren't great, I'll be the first to admit, but Bailey showed promise at times with the bat. He also really went into a slump towards the end, but Ahmed's had some pretty solid seasons. He's pretty solid against left-handed pitching, not so much against right-handed pitching, but it also just makes so much sense for Marco Luciano to go to AAA because he's not tearing it up. He didn't tear it up in AAA last year in a brief stint. He didn't tear it up in the majors. He's not tearing it up in spring. The strikeout rates are really high. And so just relieve the pressure. He's 22. Don't give up on the guy. I'm not saying that. I'm saying just let him get comfortable. Let him get his feet underneath him. Comfortable, Sacramento nearby. And then if he gets red hot and Nick Ahmed's struggling or something, then it's an easy move to kind of swap him out. And so we'll see. And I think, as your secondary shortstop, it could be Tyler Fitzgerald. It could be Casey Schmidt. I think Fitzgerald right now, based on some Farhan Zaidi comments, probably the favorite there. So I think the defense and the lineup looks, especially if they go with Ahmed and adding Chapman and adding Jung Hoo Lee in terms of the defense, and then also adding Jorge Soler when we're talking about the offense, just looks like a team that could be much improved. But there's just simply one missing ingredient for me, and that is the starting rotation. So are they really going to go into the season with this starting rotation that was already so thin and inexperienced, mostly just inexperienced, and then they've had 3 injuries? Are they really going to do it? Do you think so? Do I think so? We'll discuss in just a minute. And before we do, today's episode is brought to you in part by Amazon Fire TV. Fire TV is your destination for sports, from live games to highlights to in-depth analysis. Fire TV offers amazing viewing experiences with smart TVs like mine over there, and as well as the Fire TV stick that you can just plug into your existing TV that provides access to millions of movies and TV episodes, as well as free and live TV. Whether it's opening weekend for baseball, which is super coming up, which I'm ecstatic about, the college basketball tournament, you're going to want to have a Fire TV. Fire TV recently created Fire TV channels to deliver a constant supply of the latest videos from your favorite sports brands, all for free. Yes, that includes all of us at Locked On and most of the big pro leagues and college conferences as well. Fire TV Channels lets you dive into all of the game analysis, highlights, and more to keep up to date on the latest in the world of sports, March Madness, NBA, MLB, and lots more. Not to mention great news, entertainment, gaming, travel, cooking videos, all that as well. Check out Fire TV Channels on Fire TV and Alexa devices. If you haven't checked out Fire TV Channels, you really should. Trust me on this. To learn more, visit www.amazon.com/LockedOnFireTV. All right, here we go. We're going to discuss, man, are the Giants seriously going to go into the season with this starting rotation? I've said this over and over. It's not that they look bad. I mean, it's one thing to just have a starting rotation where, and they've had this like in the past, this is different. Like where it looks bad, but this doesn't look bad as much as it looks inexperienced. I can't emphasize that enough. Like Kyle Harrison, for all we know, he could win the Cy Young Award. Like he has that kind of upside. He could just be probably on an innings limit, probably will limit himself on innings based on not having the best command. But still, I mean, he could be a Blake Snell. Like he could be that guy. And Logan Webb is a Cy Young. I mean, he was finished second in the Cy Young race. Jordan Hicks, it could work out, but it could not. And then it's those 4 and 5 spots that make me uneasy, because right now, what are we even looking at? Like who even is the number 4 and number 5 starter? You're talking Keaton Wynn, maybe, who's coming back from an elbow pain, whatever it was that was officially the diagnosis. We did get some injury updates. One of those things, by the way, kind of big deal. Alex Cobb is progressing much faster than expected, and Bob Melvin wouldn't rule out a return in May at some point. And so, if you can get through April and then part of May and then Alex Cobb comes back, that does definitely change the equation, because you could go Logan Webb, Alex Cobb, Jordan Hicks, Kyle Harrison, and then just like kind of one young starter. But even then, I still feel like you're just one Blake Snell signing away. I just think with Jordan Montgomery, first of all, it's not my favorite profile for a pitcher. I prefer the strikeout guys. I'll live with the walks. I'll live with the not pitching deep into games. Personally, I get it. Like you gotta accumulate innings as a staff in a season, but at the same time, I'll take the lesser elite innings over the kind of innings eater type. Even though Jordan Montgomery is good, I don't love the low strikeout rate, and I do love the high strikeout rate of a Blake Snell. But so that's just the number 4 spot. And then what about the number 5 spot? Well, I think right now you're probably looking at Mason Black, who was supposed to pitch tonight. That's why this episode is out so late. I was like, okay, well, we didn't get a game in yesterday, but at least we'll get one in today. And no, they didn't. But I was going to watch Mason Black, comment on him, and talk about him as a potential opening day rotation guy. And I just think, why? Like, the injuries happen, so you're going to need these guys anyway. But if they're the guys you're going to on opening day, and then inevitably injuries happen, inevitably you've got guys on pitch counts and innings limits, you're going to really test your depth. And they believe in it. They think they've got some really good young pitching, like really good. Carson Wisenhunt, Hayden Birdsong, Randon Loop. I think that's his name. It's not showing up on Loop. Is it Brandon or Landon? Sorry about that. But they've got guys that they truly believe in, and I like these guys. Again, I'm not talking about a bad rotation. I'm just talking about a big giant question mark. And this team is otherwise built, in my opinion, to win now. Like, they've made a bunch of moves that make them a kind of win now team. I tweeted out Fangraphs projections. They're right in the thick. Like, they're literally 0.1 win away per Fangraphs from being the final wild card team, according to the projections, which I would take the over on the current projection of around 82 wins. I don't know. With the pitching they have now, maybe that's accurate. But if you add a Blake Snell, then I would definitely take the over. And that would push there are 9 teams bunched between like 79 and 84 wins. That's 60% of the National League basically vying for 4 spots, because you're going to get probably the Dodgers and the Braves winning the division easily. And then somebody's going to win the Central. So it's kind of 5 teams vying for 3 spots. And then then there's like the Pirates are there as well. But then the Rockies and the Nationals almost certainly don't figure to be in that mix at all. And that, to me, that doesn't add up to 15 teams. So you'd have to look at my tweet at Ben Kaspick on Twitter. It makes more sense there because I had it in front of me rather than, not having it in front of me now. But basically, there's a bunch of teams bunched together, and you have a chance to separate yourself by adding the reigning Cy Young Award winner, who's still unsigned. And it's just kind of insane. And the further this drags on, the more of a problem it creates, because suddenly you're looking at him not being ready to start the season. And teams like the Giants are going to start offering less money because they're going to be like, you're not going to pitch for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks into the season. And then it's like, well, at that point, Alex Cobb's going to be back. And so we don't even necessarily need you. So I don't know. And then there's always trade possibilities as well. And the Giants do have tradable pieces like J.D. Davis and Joey Bart. Maybe Marco Luciano in the right trade, potentially. But anyway, are they really? That is like the biggest question right now. Bigger than who's going to be the starting shortstop is, are they really going to go into the season with this inexperienced of a starting staff? I can't ever recall them doing such a thing, especially right now when there's a lot of pressure on them to win, I think, and they're otherwise built well, and I think built to win now. So that's kind of my 2 cents. But these guys do remain out there. They kind of acted like they were done, and then they signed Matt Chapman. So they're kind of acting like they're done, and I wouldn't be shocked if they did end up with a Blake Snell or make a trade for like somebody else, like Shane Bieber or something. So anyway, that is all the time we have for today. Thanks again for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. Everydayers on Monday. Hopefully a lot to talk about. A's Giants broadcast by the Giants. First time all spring tomorrow. So I can't wait for that, assuming no thunder, lightning, hail, hurricanes in Arizona. So Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. It's also now available on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV Channels app. Find Locked On Sports today, which is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Now available on the free Fire TV Channels app. Once again, my name is Ben Kaspick. Check me out on Twitter at Ben Kaspick, Kaspick. If you like this show, please consider rating it or leaving a review. It helps me out tremendously. So thank you in advance, and thank you so much to everyone who's done so already. Have a great weekend. I can't wait to be with you again on Monday. Thanks again for listening today. You are now Locked On Giants.